Hello and welcome to today's video. In our last two videos, we've looked at how to find the money for investment and at two key things you need to sort out before you start to invest. And those were to pay down any expensive debt you might have and to save up a cash buffer or rainy day pot of money. Once you've got those things done and you've figured out how to find a certain amount of money each month for saving and investment, you're ready to invest. So with that sorted, as I said at the end of our last video, we now go on to look at many of the nuts and bolts topics and next steps you're going to need to know about to do the best job you can with your finances. Over our next few videos, we're going to look at the key accounts you're going to want to use to build wealth. And in the UK, the main ones you need to know about and use are your pension and stocks and shares ISA accounts. We will also look at the key investing asset classes such as shares, bonds, real estate, commodities, and so on. And then at the particular importance of investment funds once you're up to speed on the various accounts and asset classes. We'll then go on to look at a number of ways to think about investment that increase your chances of success, most of which haven't changed for decades or even centuries. And to give you a sneak preview about those sorts of things, these would include investing for the long run and ideally the very long run, decades in fact, investing every month and automating that process, ideally by direct debit if you can, and totally ignoring the news. This last one is something that seems really counterintuitive to many people, but all too often following the news and current affairs will actually reduce your long-run investment returns, not improve them. We'll look at all of this and much more in the weeks and months ahead. Before we do, however, today I wanted to use this, our 12th video, to make a really important final sort of introductory point. And that is the idea that money is a long-form thing. And what I mean when I say this is that figuring out investment and getting yourself properly sorted is something that does take a bit of time. It's not something you can do in 5 or 10 minutes after watching a couple of TikTok videos. Our 6th video back in January was called The Problem with Financial Advice. And as I said at the time, good personal financial advice is prohibitively expensive for most people, something that is generally described as the advice gap. I explained why this was and pointed out that this reality is extremely problematic for millions, if not tens of millions of people, because they just can't afford financial advice, but they do need to get their finances sorted properly. And the answer to this challenge, of course, is to learn enough about finance to do a good job with your money without the need for professional help. Until such time as you can afford financial advice, the best option is to become a DIY investor. To do this, however, you do need to learn enough to ensure you get properly comfortable with the key concepts, get things as right as you can, and avoid making any painful mistakes. And cards on the table, this is going to require at least a few hours of your time. Money is a long-form thing, as I say. So over the years, I've written a lot of long-form content to help with this stuff. This has included 2 books and dozens of detailed blog pieces, many of which run to several thousand words. And in that time, I've had a lot of people criticize me for producing stuff that's just too long. People won't read it, folks say to me, or people have short attention spans and will find these long articles of yours really off-putting and boring. You should write a 500-word email, not a 3,000-word email, and your 10-minute videos are too long, you should be on TikTok, and so on and so on. And the problem with this that I wanted to talk about today is that 500-word emails or 2-minute videos really just aren't enough to get across the sort of relatively complicated topics which you need to understand when it comes to sorting out finance and investment properly and safely. Our mission as a company is to improve the financial affairs of as many people as possible. And in order to actually do that, I want you, our audience, to get a tangible outcome. For anyone who hasn't yet invested, I want you to get confident enough that you will actually get to a point where you'll open some investment accounts and start investing. And for folks who may already be investing in some shape or form, I want you to ensure you're doing the best job you can and that you deepen your understanding and your confidence about all this stuff over time. You're really not going to get this outcome from TikTok, Instagram Reels, or the sorts of lightweight daily spam emails that most companies seem to want to send us all nowadays when you join their email lists. In fact, it's actually even worse than that. There's a great deal of evidence that relying on short-form content is going to increase the risk that you make mistakes, lose money, and fall foul of scammers or just people who are unqualified and who actually don't know what they're talking about and have never passed a financial exam. Many of us are already aware that one of the tragedies of the rise of social media in recent years is the impact it has had on many people's mental health, and particularly on young people. Short form videos and reels are changing the way people process information at a very fundamental level. By now, there's a ton of academic evidence that the constant stimulation of short form content can wreak havoc with our dopamine levels and lead to addiction, compulsive behavior, and even depression. These habits are reshaping our cognitive abilities overall and our patience and ability to concentrate. But I would argue that almost equally tragic, or even potentially more tragic, is the impact all of this has had on so many people's financial health. To learn about finance, you really do need to commit a fair few hours of your time and be willing to consume at least some longer form content. All too many people are making really important decisions about their finances before they've done this, which can be hugely harmful and increases the risk that you're not going to get the fantastic long-run result which investment should be delivering for everyone. The most important thing is not for you to trust someone else online, but for you to learn enough about financial markets and investment yourself such that you then become comfortable and confident with the whole topic. I can't and won't give you specific personal financial advice like so many people do on social media, often illegally, of course. But what I can do in my books and in these videos in the weeks and months ahead is give you the key knowledge and tools you're going to need to sort this out in a way that has worked for more than a century, and is also the main reason why most rich people are rich, by the way, as I explained in a previous video. Crucially, this is also a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to know everything immediately. You just need to know enough to get started and then commit to going on a learning journey, ideally for the rest of your whole life, given the huge dividends this can and will pay for you and yours. As with any other learning process, if you do make that commitment, you will continue to learn and improve over time and get steadily better, and this really can deliver life-changing results. As I've said so often before, the tragedy is that all too few people ever actually do this, with disastrous results for them and actually for our society as a whole. And let's be clear, this really is one of the very most important things you will ever do. If you do it well, getting investment right should make life much easier over time. It will significantly reduce your stress levels and give you real peace of mind, and increase the chance that you're able to afford to do what you want to do in your life, look after you and yours, and eventually also look forward to being able to fund many years of not actually having to work at all. The time and effort really is worth it. And by the way, before you get slightly too depressed about just how much there is to learn, I'd like to repeat a point I've made a lot over the years. And that is that whilst you do need to commit a few hours, as I always say, learning enough here is certainly no harder than learning how to drive. If you think back to when you learned how to drive a car, how long did that take you? Probably tens of hours, including the time required to pass the multiple choice theory test if you're of a certain age. Most people think it is fairly normal to learn how to drive a car and pass your driving test, and this doesn't seem particularly unusual or enormously difficult to most people. But when it comes to financial markets and investment, most people don't even try. And they certainly don't commit as many hours as they do to learning other life skills, such as learning how to drive. I think this is actually a crazy societal blind spot, and one which we really do need to overturn for all of our benefit. If you spend the same amount of time learning how to drive your finances as you spent learning how to drive, that should be more than enough to get started at least. You probably weren't the best driver in your late teens, and you've probably improved since then, but you knew enough to go out on the roads reasonably safely, and the same is true of finance. You just need to learn enough to get going. So as an author, I would argue that the best source of quality long-form information about all this stuff continues to be books, and they don't have to be my ones. In fact, if you've yet to really start to learn about all things finance and want only one book to get started with that, I would actually highly recommend reading Morgan Housel's superb book and massive bestseller in recent years, The Psychology of Money. We'll provide a link to that book in the notes below. It will do you more financial good than watching any number of folks on social media, and is so worth your time as a result. As I say, money is a long form thing, but it is so worth it. So I'll sign off today by asking you to go on a relatively long-form journey with us as this year goes on. Of course, I will be most grateful if you are willing to read my first book as part of that process, and hopefully you'll see from the reviews on Amazon that people do find it helpful. For what it's worth, we're also only a few weeks away from publishing a very much updated version of my second book, Live on Less, Invest the Rest. We describe Live on Less as a workbook, given it's more the practice as against my first book, How to Own the World, which is more the theory. And you might also think about Live on Less as the companion text to so many of the ideas we're going to cover in these videos in the next few weeks. So please watch out for that new updated version when it arrives. We'll obviously be announcing that on this YouTube channel and to our email list when the time comes. And there will be a chance to grab quite a few free copies. So for now, if you want to ensure that you're one of the first to see that news and all of our future videos when they're published, please do click the subscribe and bell buttons, and please do share our videos on social media if you share our belief in how important financial literacy is. Until then, I wish you the very best.